I think most of this stuff will at least start to happen within the next 6 months to a year, would be my guess. How you doing, guys? This is Eric from RuleTheWasteland.com. So the Fed just raised rates at the high end of the expected range. You know, most people thought they were either going to raise 50 basis points or potentially 75, and they went ahead and did the 75. And the market seemed to have reacted positively to that so far. You know, the idea being that like, oh, they're doing the right thing. Yay, everything's going to get better. But obviously raising interest rates is probably going to continue to make the market and the general economy contract. It necessarily has to, pretty much. And this goes along exactly with what my prediction was for the future. And obviously I expect to continue to go along that time frame. Well, not time frame, but along that path. Specifically, the time frame is always the hardest thing to predict, and I'm certainly no expert on these matters, but there's just certain forces at play that kind of, in my mind, mandate that certain things happen. And like I mentioned before, that's that in general and just pretty much absolute terms, the currency and the economy cannot withstand a major and unchecked deflationary collapse, because it would just be absolute. Like, the system would completely shut down. The Fed and the government would lose pretty much all their power in that situation, so they're not going to do that. That's why pretty much no governments in history that run off a similar currency system have ever basically allowed that to happen, because there's just no reason to. If you're going to deal with some form of collapse anyway, they're going to do the one that at least keeps them in power, gives them some sort of, at least nominal control over the situation, and allows them to have actual bullets to fire regardless of how ineffective they are. So here's how I see this playing out. Like I've mentioned, the general trend that this framework, I guess, that this is going to follow is that they're going to continue to do the right thing, which is what they should have been doing for years, actually raising interest rates in times of economic prosperity to balance out. That's the only time that, a lot of this kind of modern monetary theory type Keynesian economics would even make sense, is even according to them, you would theoretically have to, lower interest rates when you needed economic boost and raise them when you could afford to just flatten the variance, basically. You can't, there's no such thing as a free lunch. You can't just create economic prosperity by playing with numbers, which they think you can. But I guess that's their whole plan, But so what they're going to do is continue to do the right thing, to make them look like the good guys, to give them an excuse. And then we're necessarily going to see an increasing collapse in the economy in like a deflationary / depressionary sense. So we're going to see at some point over the next, my guess is 3 to 6 months, maybe as far out as 12. Like I said, time frame is the hardest thing to judge because of all the stuff that's going on in the world, World War III and everything. But at some point, the markets will continue to collapse. The housing market will probably collapse. Bond markets, or the bond yields, will continue to rise probably as we see people fleeing the debt market, et cetera, et cetera. And once it gets really bad, housing prices are down, everything is continuing to get expensive, the markets are crashing, blah, 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 then people will beg for some sort of intervention, and that's what they need. They might use something related to the war to do it before it gets super, super bad. That's the only real question in my mind, is are we going to see an actual stock market 80% collapse, housing market, 50 to 80% collapse before they do this, or are they going to jump in a little sooner? But at some point, they are going to have to reverse course and go with full-on printing, because there's just no way to let the deflationary money-eating implosion occur and play out. That, like, our economy would literally cease to exist. So like I said, they're going to move to the melt up, and at that point we're going to see actual massive inflation. And again, my theory on this, or I don't really necessarily have an exact theory, but my thoughts on this are that they probably are going to switch to a new form of currency, some sort of weird devaluation, or switch to a digital currency before letting us get to true like Weimar levels of, bread costing $50,000, $100,000 a loaf or whatever. But we will see mass inflation. We will see the currency being devalued against real assets. So that's how I envision it playing out. I think most of this stuff will at least start to happen within the next 6 months to a year, would be my guess. I mean, sure, it could drag on for maybe a year or two before that happens, but I really don't see it playing out that way, barring bizarre outside influences. You know, who knows what's going on with the World War III and whatnot, or with China and Taiwan and all that nonsense. But I do think that these things will probably happen sooner rather than later. But time frame's the hardest thing to guess. So obviously, I think initially everything could get dragged down. I think gold and silver will probably get dragged down, at least in the paper price. Premiums will probably, on physical, probably continue to remain super high, and it'll probably be fairly hard to get until we see a detachment of the physical markets from the paper markets. But because right now people are saying, oh, the interest rates are up, that's, you know, you don't need gold, they're raising interest rates. So yeah, so we may see the paper price of gold go down. That would only be a buying opportunity in my mind if you had any, you know, dry powder, so to speak, to jump on that. But I do think that once they have to inevitably turn back to a you know, money printing type mode, all those real assets are going to go up. And I think even at that point, the stock market will go back up in nominal terms to some extent. I think cryptos would go back up, at least in nominal terms, to some extent. Certainly any real assets like gold, silver, commodities, real estate, you know, at least usable real estate will continue to go back up at that point. But then it's just a question of what the dollars are really worth, you know. But that's how I see this playing out. Let me know what you guys think. And in the meantime, obviously the food shortages and all these other issues that we have are compounding at the same exact time. So really interesting / terrible times. Let me know what you guys are doing to prepare. And as always, I put links in descriptions to some of the stuff that I'm doing to prepare. And I'll continue to post about that on this channel as well. I have some videos coming up on, now that it's getting nice and warm here in Vegas again, do some videos on the sun oven. And I'm nearing completion on my cardboard can rotator that you can build for free to store and cycle through your canned goods without having to pay any extra money, which is a good time for that because everything's really expensive. So thanks for watching, guys, and I will talk to you soon.